Hey, welcome to Beyond Organic Wine. I'm Adam Huss. Thanks so much for listening. And a special thanks to those of you who subscribe on Patreon. It is so necessary to make this possible. Thank you so much. Here's a quote from Suzanne Simard, the author of Finding the Mother Tree, subtitled Discovering the Wisdom of the Forest. And I should say, in my opinion, this book may be one of the most important since Darwin's On the Origin of Species. I know that sounds like a big claim, but for over 150 years, we've used On the Origin of Species, probably wrongly, to justify the idea of survival of the fittest and a very out of balance sense of individualism that has informed nearly everything about contemporary culture, here in the US at least. But what Suzanne Simard discovered was that there is just as much cooperation as competition in the jungle. We can't see the world through a reductive lens of parasitism and war for resources. There is also collaboration and symbiosis at every level. I don't think we realize how far the ripples of her discoveries may travel and what waves they may ultimately make. But if we take them to heart, they are revolutionary. Here's just a bit of hopeful inspiration from her for this time of year. Quote, such a marvel, the tenacity of the buds to surge with life every spring, to greet the lengthening days and warming weather with exuberance, no matter what hardships were brought by winter. End quote. This episode is in some ways about legacy. Carolina Heritage Vineyards is transitioning ownership, but will continue to maintain and build upon the same organic approach to growing and making wine in North Carolina. There are count them, 4 certified organic wineries on the entire east coast of the United States. One of them in Maine makes wine from fruits other than grapes. The other 3 use hybrid grapes exclusively, because it would be folly to try to make a living growing grapes organically on the East Coast if they were pure Vitis vinifera. Not that it's completely impossible, it's just not commercially viable. The long-term viable and ecological legacy for wine is about embracing adaptation. It's not really about hybrid grapes, but they represent a shift in mindset from fetishizing a single type of grape and then altering our world, sometimes in extreme ways, to be able to accommodate that maladapted grape, to accepting change and altering our grapes to meet the needs of our specific place in the world. When did our wine cultures begin to be defined by the belief that a handful of French grapes were the best that could ever be achieved by wine? When will we realize the absurdity of that belief? In this episode, I interview Wendy McNabb, the current owner of this organic winery, Carolina Heritage. They use paper bottles. Really interesting. First I've ever heard of it, and so we talk about the pros and cons of this kind of alternative packaging. And we talk about some of the really interesting wines that they make at Carolina Heritage, including dry Muscadines. Now, Muscadines have come up on Beyond Organic Wine before, including last week's episode, which was also in North Carolina. But Wendy and I really dig into them. The oldest vine in North America is a Muscadine, growing in North Carolina, over 400 years old. Muscadines are not hybrids. They are a species of grape native to North Carolina and the southeastern and southern United States. Some even argue that they should be classified as a different genus of Vitis, or different genus from Vitis, as they are unlike every other Vitis species in that they have 40 chromosomes instead of 38. And they have some interesting morphology as well, which we talk about on this episode. There are over 150 individual improved cultivars of Muscadines with a variety of colors and flavors, much too diverse to generalize about. Muscadines are resistant to Pierce's disease, downy and powdery mildew, phylloxera, and more. They are highly praised for these resistances in grape breeding programs, despite the difficulty of crossing them with other Vitis species due to that chromosomal uniqueness. What I'm trying to say here is that Muscadines are pretty special grapes, not just in the US, but globally. If we Americans were smart, we'd stop trying to imitate someone else's culture and start building a viticultural legacy from this truly American native grape that is unlike any other grape on earth, and that can be grown virtually no spray under some of the most intense fungal pressures and weather extremes on the planet. That is a foundation on which to build a legacy. And I'm really happy to introduce you to Carolina Heritage because they are building their legacy on that foundation. Enjoy. Wendy, welcome. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me, and honoring us here.
The royal us,
Yeah,
you're a
my husband
representative
too.
of.
Yeah,
That's good. And who are you a representative of? Can you tell where you are and the name of your winery, that kind of thing?
yeah. We are Carolina Heritage Vineyards and Winery, and we are actually also a brewery as of last year. We're out of Elkin, North Carolina, and we're one of the first organic certified vineyards in North Carolina.
Yeah, and one of only four certified organic wineries on the entire east coast of the United States, right? As far
Yep,
as I as far as
yep.
I my research results
Right.
show.
And mine too. So yes, unless any more have popped up. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just for anybody listening, that the challenge there is a that double certification that's necessary to be. You have to have both your. There are probably other people who are farming organically on the East Coast, although it is small, especially when it
Right.
comes to wine.
Right.
But the certification for the winery is a double certification. Both the vineyard and the winery have to be certified, which also sort of restricts and regulates what you do in the winery in terms of winery practices, ingredients that you use, things like that.
Correct. Yep.
So it's an extra bar. So I don't want to like disparage anybody who's doing great work in the vineyards there.
Right.
It's a great accomplishment just to be farming organically on the
Right.
East Coast.
Right.
But the winery, you got, that's why there's so few of you who are winery certified organic, because it's a double certification. Extra work for you guys, I imagine, too.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's a little bit more tricky to get around, like some of the things that other wineries will do that, you'd like to replicate sometimes, but you just really can't in the way that, you got to keep it organic. But something my husband and I felt strongly about when we took over. And this is what started as the first organic, and it was important for us to keep that. So it is a, task to do all that every year and get recertified. But I just felt like it was worth it for us to be, carrying on that legacy and to keep it organic. USDA approved organic is really something people are looking for.
And do you get any tax break for that in North Carolina? Does North Carolina offer that, or does USDA offer, or not the USDA, but like, yeah, are there tax incentives for that certification so that you get to like write off a certain amount of it?
No, there are grants. We did apply and got, I believe it was $750 for a grant that goes towards paying for your certification,
Got it.
which is a couple $1,000s a year. So it gives some help, just to pay towards that. But it's not a North Carolina, approved thing. We do
Tax
get
incentive.
tax.
Got it.
Yeah, right. We get tax incentives for being an agricultural land.
Got it. Got
Yeah,
it.
we get that. We get
And
tax breaks.
you mentioned a couple thousand a year. That's somewhat based on the size of your production, right? When it comes to certification.
I believe so.
Okay.
You know what? I'm not. We go through the certifier called oh, what's the name of it? Where food comes from. Where food comes
Okay.
from. I'm pretty sure that's the name of it. It's something along those lines.
And they help
Um,
with the whole process of
Yes,
certification.
and that's
Oh, that's
who,
good.
honestly, we walked into this 3 years ago, but that's who the previous owner had used. And there are other certifiers out there. We've heard from, some other places that, their certifiers weren't great or whatever it was, and they stopped going to organic certified practices because of that. We've never had an issue. We really have had great success with them. They're very helpful. We kind of had a lot of the documents and everything that we were doing from the previous owner. So it was kind of a nice, easy transition. We could just upload a lot because we just kept doing the same things, the same sprays,
Right.
the same, practices that they had used, we were doing as well. And so it was already kind of in their database. And so we just stuck with them. And we've had, a great certifier come out every year. And she kind of, helped us out a little bit with, all the things that we were learning. And it was great.
That's cool. So
Yeah.
where food comes from is what you think it's called?
I have to, yes, I want to say that.
Just, I mean, it sounds like a great
Actually, you
resource.
know what? I'm saying this, and I think they changed the name. Yeah, where food comes from. Yep, that's it. But I think I feel like they changed into something else. So now we had to change. No, they were something else. I'm sorry. They were a different name. I can't remember the name that she used on her labels, her old labels. And we had to change it because I don't know if they got bought out or whatever it was, and they changed their name to Where Food Comes From. Yep, that's it. I'm
Okay.
looking up their website right now.
Yeah,
Where Food
yeah.
Comes From,
Where
and
food
they're
comes from, organic, right?
yeah,
Is that it? That's cool. Okay. I
yeah,
see that now. Awesome. Just a cool resource that I hadn't heard of before. Just wanted to get
yeah.
that on the record. So
Mhm.
what is the size of your operation? Your vineyard and wine production operation.
We are growing 7.5 acres of grapes. We have 2.5 acres of organic blueberries that we use in our wine. We
Nice.
have a bunch of just random fruit trees on the property that we have used. We have a couple fig trees and pear trees and apple trees. And, it's not enough to make a full wine out of, but my husband has used the figs into a beer he's made. We have
Mm,
a pawpaw tree which we thought
yeah.
that might make a cool beer. It's just produced its first pawpaws, which is a local. I don't know if you're familiar with a pawpaw.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't. I had never heard of it or seen it, but yeah, we have some elderberries. We've used that in a wine. Yeah, so all of that is certified organic. So any of the fruit trees we use would be organic as well. And we're producing probably 500 cases of wine a year.
Okay.
That doesn't include beer. Beer's just a new thing. We're doing more kegs of beer on tap and then a couple extra cases. But usually my husband tries to do one beer of his on tap. Now, the first batch we did was organic. It's been hard to find some of the hops and stuff that he wants to do some beers on. So the beer, we still follow a lot of the organic practices, but it's technically not certified organic because he doesn't always get the
In
organic hops and
grain, right?
grain. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine that's a little tougher. Um, where in North Carolina are you?
We are about 40 minutes northwest of Winston-Salem.
Okay, so
Yeah.
a little further east.
Yeah.
Not up in the high mountainous areas as much.
No, no. We're in the valley, Yadkin Valley. We're actually in the Yadkin Valley AVA.
Got it. Do you
Yeah.
have really sandy soils there, like the sort of East Coast?
No, it's clay soil. It's a
Oh,
lot of
clay.
clay.
Okay,
Yeah, we have a
great.
lot of clay-based soil. It's great. I mean, it holds moisture really well. We get enough, obviously, rain here. Um, we're more of a of
Sometimes that's
a
an understatement, I bet.
right, yeah, more of a wet climate. That our biggest challenges is really the mold and mildew
Yeah,
versus
yeah.
what you would see in California.
Oh,
Um,
for sure. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, we had, when we bought this, there's irrigation systems set up on the vines, but she has never had to use it. And we never had to use it yet since
Right.
we've been here. So it was
Yeah.
like, I don't really know why we put that in but when it started in 2005, but it's up and it's there if we ever do need it. But no, we got way more than we really need.
That's
Yeah.
funny. Well, let's talk about some of the varieties that you are growing there, because I know that to grow in a basically subtropical climate,
Yeah.
what it's like there in the summer. You've got to have some pretty good resistance to be growing organically. How are you making
Yeah,
that
yeah.
possible?
So what we mostly our biggest crop is muscadine.
Nice.
We grow different varieties of muscadine. We have three different white varieties. We have Carlos, Magnolia, and Doreen. And then we have red varieties, Noble. That's kind of what North Carolina is known for. It's native to North Carolina. Obviously, that makes it very resilient to all the pests that are native to here. It has a thicker skin, and so a lot of people already kind of come with this preconceived notion that muscadine wine is very sweet and it has to be like sugary sweet. So that's kind of one of the big things that I try to really showcase is we grow it, so easily here. We barely have to do anything to it, but it doesn't have to be this syrupy sweet, diabetes in a glass, we joke, wine that kind of North Carolina along the East Coast is known for. So, if you've never tried a dry muscadine, I always encourage people to try it because we do produce a drier muscadine. It doesn't have a ton of sugar in the grape naturally anyway. I mean, we get maybe when we harvest 17 bricks, which
Oh
is
wow.
really low, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people are like, really? Like, and that's in all of our years of looking at her documentation from growing it here, that's about as high as it gets. And then it'll start like rotting if you don't pick it. So, yeah, so it's not necessarily a high sugar grape. It tastes great off the vine and tastes sweet to people, but in terms of sugar content,
Right.
and then the other side of the field is mostly Norton and Chamberson, and we planted Traminette. We have a couple rows of Frontenac left over. That they kind of produce not enough really to produce a full Frontenac wine, but we'll blend it in with some of the others.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're mostly growing the
That's the
muscadine and the
that's
hybrid
the
grapes.
that's the red Frontenac, the
Yes.
noir. Got it.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so first of all, I just love to point out the idea that muscadine it's not even a hybrid. So you're growing, you're
Right.
making literally like indigenous wine that's
Right.
indigenous to that area.
Right.
And I don't know how many people realize that there are these selected cultivars of muscadine that you
Right.
listed off 4 different varieties.
Yeah.
So there's like enough of a really cool development with that grape that different varieties have been selected and propagated for
Right.
those specific qualities, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And you said it's dry. Or do you make a like a straight up dry, like you just ferment it and let
Yeah,
it
we
go
ferment it to
dry?
zero, and then we add a little bit of sugar because,
Okay,
when we do sugar trials, even our driest wines, we don't usually leave them completely dry. We add a little. We do back sweeten a little bit because we found that it starts to bring out more of the fruit notes. Even just a little bit,
sure.
and
Yeah,
that's what like you were just saying about the different cultivars of muscadine, like Carlos and Magnolia are white grapes, and we have rows of them. And honestly, coming in here, they look so similar, but then when you taste them, there's such a difference. Like Magnolia has such a fruitier floral flavor than Carlos does. And, looking at them, they look exactly the same. So it's kind of unique to see that when you're, making the wine too, that you'll get a little bit more floral fragrant notes on the Magnolia muscadine than you would, Carlos, or even Noble has more of that red typical, I guess, musky, foxy flavor they always refer to
mm,
in the wine. Like, so a lot of people who have tried muscadine are like, oh, I don't like that. Maybe they don't like the Noble Red because you get a little bit more of that aromatic. But if you've tried some of these other ones, you might like them, and that's kind of what I
right.
always, everybody will go, oh, Scuppernog. I know that's actually a whole different one by itself,
Right,
and
right.
people don't know that. So it's kind of interesting to learn more about it and then see what you like. And I
So the
found I
scupper
really like the whites a lot.
Right. So Scuppernong is like it's got the word itself is used in a lot of different ways, but
Right.
you're saying it's also a variety of muscadine. It's a
It's a big,
specific.
yeah, it's a big red one.
Got it.
Hmm.
Got it. And
Hmm.
but it's also like the name given to like
It's kind of
old
the common
fashioned
name used for
wine.
all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Or
Exactly.
and it's like you said, it's used as just like instead of muscadine to describe the species or that
Right.
that species of grape.
Correct.
Um
It's kind of like a all in term that they'll use, but it's really not. Yeah.
And I think the name muscadine came from just like its muscat-like qualities, if I'm not mistaken. Do you
Yeah.
know about that at all? Like, because it's
Uh,
got that big aromatic, sweet, like fruity
right.
aromatic, similar to muscat.
I
Is that
think so. That's what I have read. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah? So interesting.
Yeah, I know. Well, and again, until you're in this and you actually go and taste it and see these different nuances, I would have never known. I had never
Yeah,
had a I'm from Buffalo, New York, so I had never had a muscadine grape or even heard of it until I moved here. And
yeah. It doesn't get much further north than like southern Pennsylvania, as far as I know, or like I guess up the coast. It could, if you're a little more coastal, maybe you're up in
yeah,
New Jersey and stuff like that. But I've had one from the Philadelphia area. I mean, just the grapes. I've eaten
Yeah, right.
Muscadine grapes from the
Right.
Philadelphia area,
The
but
grocery
not
store,
much.
people say they'll sell them, and I was like, "I've never seen them in the grocery store."
Yeah.
Until
Do they?
I never even until I got here and tried them off our own vines. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, these are good." But they reminded me in a way of like Concord grapes growing up, like that, except
Right.
those are a little thinner skinned, but how you kind of, I would always pop out the inside of those and throw the skin away. It's kind of this, but a little thicker skinned, but a lot of the same kind
Right. Right.
of flavor, juiciness I like. Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, lots of great stuff coming from North Carolina. I mean, a lot of our heritage grapes. I mean, Catawba, isn't that from North Carolina as well originally? Do you know
I
offhand?
want to say yes, because there's a lot of areas around here that are named that, but I
Yeah, I think it was named for that area where it was found, essentially. And
yeah.
it was one of like the accidental or just like, a cross that happened without human intervention, or just somebody had planted Semillon or something nearby, and then the pollen from the Semillon or the pollen from the, I forget which way it went. Probably the pollen from the Semillon probably uh, fertilized one of the wild Labrusca or
Oh,
backyard
okay.
forest
Must have been one.
Labrusca there,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
then Catawba was found at
Formed.
some point.
Right.
Um, and yeah, so I don't know, the North Carolina wine heritage goes
Yeah.
deep. I love it.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, and that's what I learned too about like even Norton. Like on our menu, we call it Cynthiana, which is
Right,
the
right.
like apparently the name of the Norton grape in the Midwest area. And the previous owner just always had it on her menu as Cynthiana because she said it just sounds prettier, which I agree. Um, but
Yeah. Well, I
it was a hybrid that apparently started near Virginia area, I think.
yeah, yeah,
And
and same way, just an accident in the
yeah,
woods in somebody's farm. Norton,
right.
the guy Norton's
And
farm, who was trying to breed grapes, but this one actually apparently just happened without, just because he had a bunch of grapes around. This one just happened by accident, not because
yeah,
it wasn't one of his intentional crosses. It ends up being the most important one with his
yeah.
name on it.
And it's very resilient. It makes, a great, I think it makes a great wine. I personally like it a little better as a blend. I think it's a little bit, it's very light bodied by itself and it's a little bit more acidic and tart than we've had it by itself. But I like when I blend it, especially with Chambourcin.
Mm,
That's a blend we have right now is a 50-50 blend of Chambourcin and Norton. And I fell in love with the Chambourcin grape. I had never even heard of that one
yeah.
until I got here. And I was like, where's the Pinot Noir? Where's the, Cab Sauv? All my reds I'm used to drinking. And I had no idea that just won't grow here well organically.
Right,
You'll find
right.
it around. It's very difficult to keep it growing here with all this humidity and mold and moisture without spraying the heck out of it. So
Yeah,
um, that's just kind of where now it's become my go-to is the Chambourcin's now my red favorite.
that's great. Yeah, I
Hmm.
love that. Yeah. So I mean, you got me thinking about Norton,
Yeah,
but the Cynthia, I've heard, just to put it out there for,
people who
the factual whatever, people who can want to look into this, and I don't want to spread misinformation, but I
right,
think that some people think that Cynthiana and Norton are two varieties. Like what, like the Cynthiana is like a sub variety of Norton, or essentially, and that it has some different characteristics. Although they're like genetically very similar, there might be some
variety in there.
specific, very small
Yeah,
difference that gives, I like,
yeah.
graphically you can
Okay.
tell a little difference or
Uh-huh.
something, like, as
Oh, I
well as
didn't know
in flavors you can tell a little difference, but they
that.
are
Okay.
otherwise, to the rest of us, it's like, they're
Yeah.
identical, but that
Right.
there are apparently subtle differences, so I don't
Nuances
know.
to it. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that myself. So when I had, researched it, I just thought it was just, I heard like in the Midwest, St. Louis area, that's what they call the same one. But you're right.
Well, I
It
think, and
could
there
be
might be
at
some
this
debate
point.
about it. Yeah,
At this
I think
point,
there's
there
an
could
on
be some genetic difference that we are like, who knows? It's been bred so many times and spread.
right. Well,
Hmm.
and I think there might be some debate about it, and it might be because people have used them so interchangeably that it's just
Right.
added confusion. Like everybody
Right.
thinks it's the same thing, but and so that, like, they've used the name, for the wrong one throughout,
Right.
multiple different times. So
Right.
it confused the issue further. So who knows?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, okay. So Chamberson, what can you tell me about it? Like, how does it grow in the vineyard? Like, how easy is it to care for compared to like your Muscadines and Nortons and things like that? What are,
I think it's pretty easy for us. We have it planted right by the Norton. I would say, I mean, it's difficult to kind of note the difference when you see them growing right next to Norton. They're,
okay.
a little bit smaller grapes than the Norton grapes, and there's a different pattern on the leaves.
Sure.
Um, I think it just is a fruitier, which I like, is more of a berry note, fruity
Mm,
kind of flavor that it gives off, more cherries and berry notes that I like,
yeah.
so I just think it is, one of my favorites. Easy to grow. It's pretty similar, I would say, as far as I know, and we really haven't had to deal with this, but the Norton's definitely and resilient and against Pierce's disease and some of the other
I
ones.
was just gonna ask that. I'm
Yeah,
literally looking. That's
yeah,
funny.
we haven't we haven't had to have any issues with that, thank God. Our biggest thing is downy mildew, and what's the other one? My gosh, I'm drawing a
Black
blank.
rot
No,
or
not black rot. Downy
uh,
mildew, powdery mildew.
powdery. Yeah.
Yeah. So probably if we start seeing any signs of downy mildew, it's usually on the Chamberson first. I would say
Okay.
it gets to Chamberson a little bit before it would get to Norton. Um,
Okay.
and then we'll use a peroxide based spray, oxidase, and that'll take care of it right away.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
yeah, so
Nice.
those are the main sprays we're using. Is an oxidase, which is a hydrogen peroxide based spray for the mold and mildew.
Uh huh.
We do use lime sulfur early in the season.
Okay.
That's organic approved, when it's especially wet and colder. Um, and then our main ones throughout the warmer time is the oxidase whenever we see signs or early on, and a neem oil spray. We'll
Okay.
use, we were using stylet oil for a little while, but we felt like it wasn't really doing anything compared to the neem oil.
Oh,
Stylet
interesting.
oil was approved to help with mold and mildew and all that as well, but it's
Right.
more expensive. And we
Right.
felt like we did, the same kind of effect with the oxidase and the neem oil. And then we have a clay-based spray, Canaline clay, called Surround.
Yeah.
That's the one we use as it gets closer to Japanese beetle season. And when, the grapes are already set and developing, and this will protect the leaves. It
Right.
kind of puts like this white clay coating on the leaves, and protects
The
them. They don't like eating it, and so they,
yeah.
and we really don't even have to spray that on the muscadine. It's so interesting to see that they don't even really touch. They'll be all in the field with the Norton and with the Chamberson, and if we don't use that, they will eat the heck out of those grapes, or not the grapes, the leaves. Sorry, they don't eat the grapes.
Right. Right.
But they skeletonize the leaves so that you can't finish photosynthesis to get the sugar development in the grapes to ripen.
Well, and
Um,
that's what I was going to ask about the clay. The clay doesn't create enough of a opacity that
Barrier.
that
Yeah,
it
that was
stops.
apparently, it's funny because I took a class at Surrey College, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but the community college in this area in the Yadkin Valley has a great program for viticulture and enology, and they're one of the only
Okay.
ones
Oh wow.
that have this program, and they have their own vineyard and everything. Yeah, so Surrey, if you look them up, Surrey Community College. So I took a class there because that's what the previous owners had done when we took over. Is they didn't know what they were doing when they bought this, and they just took classes and learned it as they went. And so I was like, okay, I'll go. I ended up only taking one class because I was doing so much work on our own business side of
Right.
it. I was like, I can't do both. But one of the class was on pest management, and that was one of the big things we learned. And that was a question in a project I had to do because I was comparing the cost analysis of using surround for our smaller organic farm than like a bigger neighboring vineyard. And it definitely is like, I would say 2 to 3 times the cost of the cheaper chemical sprays that the other vineyards use for the same problems with like
Mm,
beetles. Um,
right.
but we're also smaller, and
Right. Right.
when I did that, I was like, it's not much of a difference for us because we only have, 9.5 acres, and some of it we don't even use the surround on, like I said, with the muscadine, because it doesn't need it.
Right.
Um, so, it was really interesting to see. And that was one of the questions the professor asked me, like, did you see any research on that? Because that's something I've heard. And with the cannelin clay, like blocking the sun. And I'm like, I was doing the research on that and I didn't see really any truly negative effects of it. And like you said, it's such a light level spray and it washes off with water. Um, I
Yeah.
don't see any effects of it on our grapes or our vines. So I,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
you know,
it.
it's going to be a
Yeah.
trade off either way. You can't do everything perfect, but I thought it's definitely better than these beetles eating the leaves to death.
Right. Right. Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
mhm, yeah.
That's right. No, that's cool.
Hmm.
And that's good. I haven't really talked about that on the podcast, but I know I've worked with it too in Vermont, or I've worked with grapes that were sprayed with it in Vermont
Hmm.
as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, and when like you said, when it comes in, I think it just in the winery, even if it gets on the grapes, it just settles out. Like as
Yeah.
the wine ages, it's just sort of like any clay particle just
Right.
settles down to the bottom, and you can rack off, and it's
Yep. Yeah.
inert
And
and
you don't notice an effect on it. And yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I
Yeah.
love that the muskies are not that the beetles don't eat them. That's so cool. I mean,
Yeah,
it
they'll
seems
eat a little bit of the new sprouts at the top, but very
okay.
only like the soft leaves at the very top that'll start coming out. But very little, um, not enough to really have an effect. And then they go, I think there's not enough there and they go on and it's fine. We
Yeah,
haven't had an issue.
seems like a good grape to build a winery around in your area.
Yeah.
That's-
Well, and that's it. And that's what, a lot of the people in the class after, there's another woman that helps us out in the weekends and she was in the class with me and she has a property and she's growing grapes over by the East Coast. And she said, said the same thing. She goes, after all that, the class and learning about all the different varieties, it seems like, all the other varieties are just going to be such a challenge for me to manage by myself,
right.
So if I could grow muscadine and not have to do much or spend so much with, pest management, I'm going to do that. And I'm like, okay, I think that's great. Kind of
So,
more of nature.
and while we're digging into it, you mentioned that sort of the musky, what people have referred to as foxy flavor that's on
Right.
the red one,
Yeah.
the redder varieties of
Mhm.
muskies. I mean, so I've done a whole podcast about this term foxy because it's been
Mhm.
used so pejoratively, and I think like in many cases people like these flavors, or it's
Mhm.
just something different and new, and we don't have to think of it as a negative at all. It's just,
Right.
like it's a that's distinctive of this grape or this
Yes.
variety or whatever.
Mhm.
What has your experience been with it? Like how do you think foxy is an appropriate term? Does it even resonate as like what those flavors taste like and smell like to you? Or is it like, I mean, to me the wines that have been touted as foxy, if they're well made, they're always just really fruity. Like
Mhm.
they have like different fruity flavors, whether it's like cotton candy or strawberry or raspberry or just grapey because it's so associated with like Concord grape,
Right.
Welch's
Right.
flavors that we're used to growing up.
Yeah.
What is it that you're experiencing with the muskies that you when you
I
say that?
Yeah, I mean, that was a term, again, I learned through this that people usually refer to. I think there is a distinct aroma and flavor on the noble wine. I don't, when I eat the noble grapes, I
Yeah.
don't get that. But when you get it in the wine form, I definitely can tell I know what they're referring to Do I think it's a foxy or musky? That has such a negative connotation to me. I don't know why. Like, I think musky is not a good thing. I don't think. I don't know in a term of what I would think refer to that, use that term for. But I don't think I agree with you. I think it's more of like a cherry notes of fruit, but then I also get maybe like very earthiness
Hmm.
with it. I think um, I I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think people pick up on it, and kind of what I've seen is that because of that, and a lot of the vineyards that do muscadines, I think they try to mask it with a lot of sugar, and that's kind of why muscadines are known for being a very very sweet wine around here.
Okay.
Um, and I think that is something that you don't really get on the whites. And I definitely know, you get it on the reds, I think, because you're picking up on the thicker skin. So there is something in the thicker skins
Yeah.
that, is definitely on the reds. You're going to pick up on that. But I always tell people too, they're doing a ton of research on the resveratrol and that chemical in these grape skins that
Yeah.
for cancer fighting and all that. So, it might be a unique and new kind of flavor to you. And some people who are first trying it, they're like, oh, I don't know what that is, but I like it. Or there's some people that have had, muscadine wine before and they're like, oh, I know that smell. I don't like it.
Yeah.
So I think for new people trying it, I think you're right. I think you start to see it as you experience muscadine more. I don't get it really so much on the whites. But I do
Yeah.
smell it on the reds, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just a distinction of a muscadine grape on the skins because you're picking up on some different chemicals in the thicker skins.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
And if I'm not mistaken, those reds, they do get the color from the skins. It's a white flesh, right? Or is that right with
Yeah,
with
yes.
Muscadine? Okay.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. On the inside you're talking about, yes. It is
Right.
a
Yeah. The
light color
inside is
on the inside flesh,
clear.
and
Yeah.
then the outside is, yeah.
It's very
Yeah, and
different.
the noble, you gotta be careful because the noble, if you let that ferment too long on the skins, that gets so dark, like, people could drink that wine and your teeth will be, like, stained red. So we don't let it ferment very long on the skins because it already gets dark. Like, if you leave
Right.
it for longer than, a couple days, you're getting a really, really dark wine that's gonna stain people's teeth. So
Gotcha.
nobody wants that. Um, yeah, but
That's
you
great.
definitely, it's got a lot of pigmentation in it.
Yeah, so naturally resistant to or tolerant of Pierce's disease, naturally not appealing to Japanese beetles, multiple
Hmm.
varieties. Man, muscadine, you're really selling me on these muscadines. Very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, yeah. You do have to
um,
be careful with the bunches. Sometimes, if you don't leaf pull and it gets really damp in there, you'll get botrytis. You'll get,
okay,
some other, mold and mildew, but
okay,
really not enough to ruin the whole crop. You'll get, because
gotcha.
muscadine, are individually, they don't really go into a big cluster. So you can
Right,
pull
right,
off some of the bad ones and,
right.
pick
Yeah,
through.
is harvesting a pain in the butt because of that? Like how?
It's a time consumer.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, it is. First year we learned, like, you kind of go through one round down the rows and pick all the good ones or shake them. Really, you want to feel them, and if they come right off in your hands, they're ready. But then
yeah,
there's other ones that are completely still hard and green, or not
right.
ready yet. So it's usually a second round about a week later or so. We try not to do that too much. We try and let some of the other ones kind of get a little bit further along and really be ripe, so that we're closer to it, just to kind of save time and cost, because we bring in crews to help us with harvest and all that. Um, but yeah, the noble actually will, the red will actually be pretty close at the same time. So noble, in the past year or so, it's been warmer, that they've kind of all ripened, that if you go to grab them, they're kind of falling off in your hand all at the same time. So we'll even grab kind of some more unripe ones with them, and we just do it all at the same time. Because you let it sit for a day or two and it'll kind of ripen on its own there, and then process it into the bin.
Wow.
Yeah, noble will kind of all go at the same. The whites are a little bit more of the, challenge, that it's like got to go, rows one time through and then a week later go back down the rows again, you know.
Got it.
But
And now I'm reading about Muscadine. There's over 100 uh, improved cultivars of Muscadine out
yeah,
there on
I've
the market.
heard that too, and I've heard of some new ones coming that are
Amazing.
being created. Yeah,
And I I wish that my grapevine like biology, like I wish I like the I wish I had the vocabulary for like the peduncle and the pedicel, but it's missing one of those, and that's what you're talking about, where it's it doesn't bunch, so
it
it's like
doesn't punch. Yeah. Oh,
each
you're right.
berry.
I took this in the class too, and now I
Right,
can't remember which is which. We'll have to get a diagram
I think it's
up
missing
here.
the peduncle, but don't
Is it
quote me on
okay?
that.
All right, you found
I
it.
could be wrong.
Okay. Because you're saying those words, and I'm like, I know which is which. Hold on, I'm trying to picture it. Yeah. So yeah, they don't cluster, and you don't pick off a whole cluster. You
And
have.
because of that, you
Mhm.
have like what you're describing, which is like more individuality in each berry, because they're not ripening as a cluster. You'll have like,
Right.
this one will be big, this one will be small, this one will be
Correct.
ripe sooner, this one will
Yep.
be ripe later.
Yep.
Um, so it kind of, yeah, it's almost like blueberry picking a little bit
Yep.
with
Which is exactly another thing that is we
time
do.
consuming.
And that starts in July and goes till like August, because you're doing round after round after round. Where, I mean, I think we did 3 different rounds of picking, and there were still more last year that we just started an open you pick because we were done. We had plenty of, we went from 160 pounds of blueberries our first year here to 740 pounds last year. And that was plenty for us to make wine, that we were like, anybody want to come on out and pick. We didn't get a big turnout because everybody was like, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to pick blueberries out there. And it was hot. It was real hot. And so we kind of left them for the deer and the birds at that point. We were like, we're good. We're done. But yeah, that was something we've seen with our blueberries as well. And the biggest thing for that was we added nets. We invested in nets. So that's another organic method of just putting up physical barriers, because the deer and the birds ate a lot of our blueberries the first year, and the whole like last 2 rows of our noble red. And the nets alone helped a ton. So we invested in that, and did nets. And then we also added bees, and we had 4 beehives, and
Beautiful.
that was awesome because not only did we get amazing honey and get to see, the honey change over the course of the spring to summer, like it gets darker in color, it gets sweeter based on what's blooming. So that was really neat. But the blueberries we got were bigger, they were sweeter. So it was great just from the bees alone too.
Beautiful. And
Hmm.
now that I'm double check. I love working with bees. I've kept bees here in Los Angeles
Oh,
too, and yeah, I want to incorporate them everywhere I go. I mean, it's just, I don't know. There's, like they bring life. They're their
yeah,
own amazing thing that just to learn from and
right.
observe, and yeah.
Yeah, and there's
Um,
so much you could teach people just with bees alone on ecology and the environment and all these different things.
yeah. And so as I'm looking at this, I think what they're missing is the pedicel. So they're just connected
Oh,
directly to the peduncle. Each
yeah,
berry is connected via peduncle to the stalk or whatever. So
right.
Um, yeah, so
Okay, good.
that way they again, don't quote me, but now
Yeah,
I'm just quickly doing some googling
yeah,
to correct myself.
yeah,
Anyway, that's the difference between them and other grapes, which have both, have the peduncle, which then connects to multiple pedicels, which connect to the grapes, and then the muscadines just have the peduncle to each grape,
yeah.
to individual grapes. I think. Don't quote me
I
again.
think you're pretty sure. I'm looking up too because it's gonna bother me until I see the picture.
So I guess the question I have for you, when back sweetening, how do you guys do that to prevent re-fermentation in bottles? So what
Yeah.
substances do you use in the winery that allow you to, or do you sterile filter, or what's the
Yeah.
process to allow you to back sweeten?
Yeah, well, we've learned some things, I'll tell you that, because we did have in the beginning some issues with that.
Some
With
exploding
reefer,
bottle.
yep, yeah, that was fun, especially on the paper bottles, which we'll get into.
Oh, I can't wait. Yes.
Yeah, oh, that was an adventure. And our also our canned wines and stuff. But the
Oh
biggest
yeah.
thing, we do. So one of the big things to clarify on the organic wine is if you're doing any type of organic wine, you can't put in the United States, you can't put in any sulfite. So we are made with organic grapes, and
So
we're
that you
allowed to put some low levels of sulfite into our wine.
right.
And so that's just something that I kind of always clarify to people, because is it true organic wine in the United States? It's, not considered organic wine. If we were in Europe, you could put some levels of sulfite and still call it organic. Um,
Yeah.
and so it's just a little difference in that. But so we do use, an SO2, liquid SO2 gas in the liquid. And then we will a sterile filter. We do make sure that we use a 0.45 sterile filter twice. We actually will do it after we add the sugar and then right before bottling, and we're really
Okay.
checking the SO2 levels.
Got it.
I
Got it.
wasn't as consistent with checking the SO2 levels those first few times that we did it. And I didn't
Gotcha.
realize that I need to be at a higher SO2 with the sugary ones. You
Right.
know, so yeah. And we really try to also showcase, especially with the paper bottles, it's not meant to last forever. I mean, any wine where you're going to put any level of sugar in it, you're at a risk if one little yeast cell gets through that sterile
Yeah.
filter,
Yeah.
that these are not wines that are going to age in your basement for 10 years, and
Yeah.
they're our biggest thing is drink them and enjoy them, and
Yeah.
our bottles, especially the paper, they will say on there, drink within 6 months,
Oh
and that's
wow.
kind of
Okay.
like our turnover is like, drink it within 6 months. We're not a big winery. We're not distributing and having these cases of wine sitting in a storage. We don't want that, to keep it natural and keep it organic and in the level that we have to do it at. Drink it and enjoy it, and then come buy more and come try other new ones we got coming out. That's probably um, the biggest difference. Ooh, sorry about that. The biggest difference that we had to learn, is
So that's great. Yeah. So double
um,
sterile filter and maintain your free SO2 levels so that
yeah,
you're inhibiting as much as you can
right,
within the made with organic grapes limit.
right.
Um, so do you have a I don't know if like if you want to get into the chemistry, but is there like a molecular SO2 level that you shoot for, or is it just
Uh,
like a parts per million, or how do you?
Yeah, I was always taught, like, with whites to kind of keep them around 40 parts per
Okay.
million,
Uh-huh.
and reds, and again, reds will maybe add a little bit on the, like, Chamberson or the dry reds just to bring out a lot more of the fruit, but it's very little,
Right.
on that, so that could be at a lower, like 25 parts per
Yeah.
million.
Yeah.
So those are usually the numbers I gauge it by.
Got it. Okay.
Um uh Really, I don't go and I've just kind of learned that, like, when you start getting into 90, 80 parts per million, you might be able to taste it,
Yeah.
and that's what I don't want to get to.
Yeah. Yep.
you
I
know
definitely
um
tasted that.
yeah, I know, me too, but and it's kind of scary on some of our, because we do sweet wines. We have a lot of people in this area who love sweet wines. And our sweet wines are really our best sellers. Our apple pie is our mulled sweet apple wine. And
Mm.
that's kind of interesting, because that probably has one of the most sugar levels of any of our wines that we do. And that one has never re-fermented, knock on wood. Uh, and I really say, I'm like, it must be something in the chemistry of
Yeah.
apples that make it different. And I never really went into
Oh.
researching it, but I think that is kind of a unique thing that in my background in science and biology, I'm just like
Interesting.
making my own little hypothesis on that. Because our red one is a glog, which is a Scandinavian, like, spiced mulled wine for like Christmas
Yeah.
time, and we'll warm it up for you. People love that. And that's made with Chamberson and Norton as the red base. And then we mull it with the same spices and sugar levels almost as the apple wine. And that one we had an issue with the first year. And I don't think we
Okay.
filtered it properly. We had issues with filtering out a lot of the spices in the beginning because a bag of spices just broke in the middle of the wine. And it was, oh yeah, we learned there's a lot of hard lessons in this, but you don't
That's
want
great.
that to happen, and you're filtering like crazy.
Well, do you want to talk about your apple pie wine? Because that
Yeah,
sounds really fun and
yeah,
interesting and delicious.
yeah.
What goes
That
into
is
that?
that is a bestseller here, and people kind of come in and like, you have that apple pie wine, like everybody loves and a lot of people put it tastes like apple pie moonshine, and we're in North Carolina, so that's what everybody wants, and but it's fantastic. So that one that's tough because we've looked at organic apples and you can't find. I've called several places that they don't do organic apples around here. So if we wanted
Yeah.
to get organic apples, we'd have to like ship them from Oregon, and was
Right.
not
Right.
about to do that. So that one is not organic, but we still we treat it like all the other ones. So we it's very minimal in processing and additives or any of that. So I feel like if I can't get it organic, I try to get it local, and I'm at
Yeah.
least doing something good. So we actually get it from a local orchard in North Carolina. It's about 45 minutes from us, and it's Perry Low Orchards, and they press it for us and everything. And it's Pink Lady apples and a mix, but it's mostly Pink Lady apples. And they give it to us in a juice, and we pick it up fresh pressed juice, and then we bring it back here and we add the yeast. And once we get apple wine out of it, which it is like 11%. So that's a difference that I've learned also about apple wine versus apple cider. A
Mm.
cider is the same thing, but it's a lower percent alcohol. So again, if you were in
Different.
Europe,
Yeah.
ciders and wine really they don't make a differentiation between the alcohol level. So if you're a higher alcohol level, I want to say it's above a 6-7%, then it's considered an apple wine. So we try to get it to it's traditionally been about 11%. So
Okay.
that's what we get it to, and so it's a straight dry apple wine, and then I will pump it into a big tank. I have like a big 100-gallon boiler tank, and I add sugar and then get that going and dissolved. And then I will put a big, like a basket, hop basket for like the beer in the middle. And that's where I pour in pounds and pounds of raisins and almonds, cinnamon sticks and cloves. I'll make a few big
Mm.
mesh bags filled with that as well and float them in there. And then
Wow.
crank up the heat a little bit and warm it up, not too much. You don't want to boil off the alcohol, but you get it simmering on low and stir it up for about an hour and a half, and then pump it back into a tank. And I repeat that for about 300 gallons. So it's about 3 or 4 times. It is a
Okay.
labor of love for that wine. I will tell you that. It is a lot of time and effort, but man, is it worth it in the end because people
Mm.
remember it. They know it. We actually, last year, we bottled it and we did it in cans. And it was a hit at festivals because people love walking around with just a can of this
Yeah.
cold apple pie mulled spice wine, and you just have like 2 glasses in a can versus a full bottle. So you can
Oh,
take it
that
on
sounds
a boat
delicious.
and take it with you to the beach, and yeah, so that's been a hit. And we'll always continue to do that because that's one that's sought out. That we said if we were to ever go into distribution, that is the one to do. But man, is that a labor of love? I was supposed to do that actually yesterday, and my son was sick, and I was like, I can't. That's got to be postponed till a different day when I don't have a 4-year-old running around because that's work on that, but it's worth it. And so we let it then sit and cool off and chill out for like about a week in the tank with after all the sugar and spices, and then we'll filter it and get it prepped for bottling.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, and well, that one and the glog, the Christmas mulled one, is the same process, but with a red
Uh-huh.
wine base. And the only other difference is we add cardamom. So you get little of those Christmas
Mm.
cardamom notes, and that one
Mm.
we'll make too and warm it up all year round.
With a
Um,
red wine base.
yeah, that's a red wine. Yep.
So that
And
one
go
you
ahead.
can be organic on, I guess, on that one.
Yeah, that one you can. Yes, if we're using the Chamberson and the Norton from from us. Yep.
Right.
And
Cool.
yep, and yeah, so that is the two that we'll do probably 60, 70 cases of that one, of both of those a year. And then make more, where the other wines we're doing about 20, 25 cases. But those are in such demand that,
Got it.
we do a lot more of those.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Hmm.
So, well, one question I had before, I can't wait to talk about your paper bottles, but
Oh, yeah.
so you are making some organic wine and some not organic wine in the same facility. Is there any complication with that, or like, are there any weird details that you have to follow to be able to make that possible, on paper for the USDA, or how does that
Yeah,
work?
basically anything we do in the organic wine, everything has to be well labeled. And these are little details that, like, on the
Got
tank,
it.
it has to say organic. When we bring it up in the computer system, we have to, list it as organic.
Got it.
When we're cleaning, like, we're allowed to use non-organic cleaner stuff.
Uh-huh.
So like, we do like soda ash and citric for our cleaning of our supplies.
Okay.
As long as we tell them that we're using it only for cleaning, we're not using it in the wine, we're not, just for cleaning out tanks and stuff like that. Yes.
Got
And we
it.
have to, like, give them the cleaning procedures that we go through,
Okay.
and sign off on that and have like a little thing. It's more documentation, and that they're trusting us that we're following that.
Right.
Um, Separate of where the cleaning stuff is compared to the organic approved stuff to use.
Got it.
When
Separate
we're
storage. Yeah.
storage, exactly. So, and that's all the stuff the organic inspector checks for. Like, when she's coming in, she's looking for all that on the tanks, and that it's clearly labeled and clearly identified. And they do a full process. We sit down and they, like, track how much wine we made and how much, got bottled, how much got sold, and they'll do the whole process of following it from beginning to end. But they only do it on our organic ones, that we have listed as fully made with organic grapes. So, like, for example, I have a Niagara wine, and we don't grow Niagara here, but this was actually a friend of ours down the road grows it. And he said, I have this extra Niagara wine. You're probably the only one who knows Niagara out here, because it's more of an upstate New York cold weather grape. And that's what I grew up on. And everybody around here thinks Niagara is Muscadine. So they're just not as familiar with it. And he
Yeah.
had extra and he was willing to sell it. And I was like, yeah, I'll take it. I will love to make a wine out of that, just for my own enjoyment. Because I love that grape and I love that wine. So, like, that Niagara wine,
You have a
is not
personal
organic,
connection
because we
too,
bought
right?
it from somebody else who's not certified organic. So,
Right. Right.
so
Right.
there are some there, and that's, we'll clarify that to people if, they want. Most of them are really just happy that we're doing anything that's a little bit, better for the environment. And, like, same thing, like I said, like, we have a strawberry wine coming out, and we actually bought the strawberries from the local farm down the road, where he doesn't grow them organically, but I'm like, I just want to try it out, and I'm making a small batch, and it's more of us to just try and carb it and make a carbonated,
Mm,
strawberry wine for summertime. And so we got it from the local farm in
amazing.
Dobson. And I was like, if I can't find it organically, I'll find it locally and help out our local farmers. And I
Yeah.
feel like, at least I'm trying and doing that
Yeah. Well, let's
instead
talk about, yeah. No, I appreciate that. I mean, I think that is, yeah, I appreciate that.
of.
Um, well, paper bottles, what the heck?
Yeah, and you got to look at the picture of them and the videos and all that to see what that looks like. Because
And is that on your website? Can you say where that
yeah,
is?
yeah, and
What's your
actually,
website?
the website is CarolinaHeritageVineyards.com.
Okay,
There's
cool.
pictures of them, yeah. And then on our social media, our Facebook and our Instagram, I have a video up there of how you recycle it. There's one that shows you how you break down the paper bottle to recycle it. Um, yeah, so this was kind of a cool thing. And the story behind this began when we took over 3 years ago. The local Surrey County we live in stopped recycling glass. And so out here in the farms, like you physically take your recycling and your garbage to this recycling center in town, and they have you, separate out your cardboard and whatever. So there was an area that used to be for glass, and they said, no more, don't leave your glass here, throw it in the dumpster. And the reason is because of the cost and the weight. And I guess it just wasn't worth them to recycle it anymore for the cost of it and the work they had to, and energy going into it, and gas prices and all this other stuff, I guess. Um, and they told us the closest place to recycle glass is like going towards Charlotte, which is like an hour away. And I'm like, there is no way I am lugging cases and cases of empty glass bottles. So I was an environmental science teacher for 18 years. And I knew there's other, unique sustainable packaging coming out that I was like, we should look into it. And so it's kind of what my husband did at the time. He was working actually IT for a company that does packaging, plastic packaging mostly, but they have a special division of environmental packaging. And he looked at theirs and was like, it's still plastic. I don't know. And then in a random search online, we find these cool paper bottles. And this company was using them, called Signal 7 Wines. And we ordered some of theirs and got it sent to our house just to feel and touch it and see it. And we were like, these are really cool. And this is unique. And nobody is doing this in our area. So that came out of England. It was actually, it was called Frugal Pack. They're the ones who designed this machine that folds and creates cardboard on the outside with a recyclable plastic bladder on the inside. And so the first year we actually were like, well, let's try it. And we ordered them from England and had to have them shipped. And that was a huge cost and waiting, and
Right.
comes on these huge pallets. But they're fully designed and assembled. And all we do is fill them with our wine and cap it. And my husband
Right.
did all the designs. So when you look at our pictures, we wanted them to look really colorful, and they all kind of have a different signature look, picture, and name based on a charity that we were going to donate $1 per bottle to. So you'll see like our paddler one has a kayak on it, because that one gives back to the Yadkin River Keeper, a local organization that helps protect the watershed and does water cleanups and water quality testing around here. And so they're all kind of unique. But we ordered that the first year, and just to say, like, let's do this. But really what kept us was the machine was shipped to a printer, Kinsbray Packaging, out of Canada, Ontario. So the next year's order came from there, and it was a lot cheaper, and it was, easier to ship and all that. So that's what made us stick with it. Because the first year, like I said, we were learning, and we found out the temperature the paper bottles were a little bit more temperature sensitive. Here in North Carolina, it's a little bit warmer. So as soon as we got, if anything started to re-ferment in a warmer temperature, those bottles started popping. And we were like, whoa, and they just like start leaking out the side. And then also the capping, we didn't have that aligned right correctly the first time. So our caps were leaking if you laid them on the side. It was, it was a learning experience. And then we kind of figured it out. So,
Yep.
yeah. So then the second year, and now since, we order it from Kinsbray, and they send you a template, and we do all our own designs and send it back to them, and they print them, and we'll get it shipped once a year on a big pallet. So in the
And is it
meantime, we didn't really know on some of our wines in the harvest what we were going to have. So we do have some glass bottles we still use if we need to. And we didn't put in the order for that particular wine, or we created a new blend. And, so we'll have paper and glass and cans, kind of all different types of packaging.
so? Do you have to implement any special equipment on your end to use these paper bottles?
Yeah, we had to buy a ROP capper. a capper machine.
Okay. Got it. Got it.
That was it. No,
Got
that
it.
was
So,
just something we didn't have. We had a corker, but that was,
right.
so, and we kept that for when we,
And that
we,
capper would probably be useful for any kind of Stelvin closure. Is that right? Or
yeah,
no? Is it
anything
specific?
like we could, if we bought the right glass bottles, we could cap them too with that too.
Got it. Right.
Hmm. Yes.
That's
So
really
that was an
cool.
investment in the capping machine. And
And you don't have to assemble these. They
no, that's amazing. They come
just
fully
like a case
standing
of new
up.
bottles. Right.
Yeah. And they come standing up on a pallet wrapped. So like, and that was another thing, that the kin spray was new. They had just bought that machine. They were a packaging company and they had just bought that machine from the company in England. And I think we were one of the first few to buy from them. And so a few came and they were damaged and they were bent and whatever it was. And we took pictures and sent it to them. And we've actually talked to the CEO several times because he wanted our feedback of like, okay, what could we, do different? Some of the labels at the top, like around the cap rim, were peeling off. And so,
Yeah.
it was a good kind of experience for everybody. It's still new
Yeah.
technology,
Yeah.
everybody's still kind of learning and like, which is kind of cool, but you got to be a little bit more patient and
Yeah. Plan
you
ahead
gotta
a little bit
explain
more.
that and translate that to the customer,
Right.
which, because they get all excited about it and which is cool, but then somebody left their, wine out in their hot garage and it was 90 degrees and like, just those
It,
little things that it's just,
yeah.
you
Well,
know,
that wouldn't be good if it was in
it,
glass either.
exactly either, but we had more of a leakage with the paper. They started, part of that
Got it. Got it.
was the
Okay.
filtering, but it's also, just different.
So
It's different material.
are
It
there
takes longer to get cold, but then it stays colder longer. But go ahead. Sorry.
so no, no, no. Is there so it takes longer to chill than
Yeah.
like a paper because it's almost like insulation, but
Right.
it's also protecting the wine in a way from light and
Hmm.
heat in another way.
Right.
Like it gives you a little like
Yeah.
buffer in that sense too, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Now, is there a separate bladder like you said, or is it like just a lining on the inside, sort of like a coffee cup kind of thing, like
No, it's a separate
disposable
bladder.
coffee cup?
Yeah. It's
It's
a
a
separate
separate
bladder.
bladder.
So
Wild.
literally think wine in a box, but in the shape
Right,
of a bottle. And
but in
that's
the
it.
shape of a bottle.
Right.
Huh.
Yeah.
And so somebody who uses this can break it apart and pull out that plastic liner as like a recyclable and then yeah, have two separate
Right.
things. Is that
It goes with your
got it.
cardboard recycling. And then this is a level 4 plastic, which will, I don't remember the fancy chemistry name for it, but it's a level 4. Because I did the research on that because taking it here to our local recycling center at first, the guy that worked there kind of was giving me a hard time, like, you can't recycle those. And I'm like, no,
No.
no, I did my research on this before we invested. And if you have a level 1 to 7, it gets recycled at all North Carolina recycling centers. You have to rinse it out. It has to not be, filled with wine or whatever. The caps don't get recycled. They have to be, thrown away, but the bladder will. And, it's not the same. It kind of looks like the silver lining of like a Capri Sun, but it's not the same chemistry. So like Capri
Got it.
Suns can't be recycled, but these can.
This is I think 4 is LDPE, low density polyethylene,
Yes,
if I'm
now
I'm
that you
just
say
looking
that.
online.
Yeah, look at you go with your chemistry. Good job. Yeah,
Just looking
now,
stuff up.
yeah, good job. And that's what that's made from. And so people have, will ask, well, does it have a weird flavor from the bladder or any of that? And even with our wines we put in cans, because we bought the canner for the brewery, people, ask that, does it give and I don't taste any of it. And we haven't had anybody say anything about aluminum flavor. That's always kind of the concern. But I also say part of that, I think, is because these are not sitting in these bladders for more than a year, or the
Yeah.
cans for more than a year. It's, you think about a lot of canned beer and all these companies that distribute, like a lot of them are sitting in warehouses for years. You could pick up some of those flavors over time. I think because ours are so fresh and a quick turnover, you're not getting
Yeah.
any of that. And I don't think you will. But
Yeah.
if that was a concern, that's really, I think, again, even more of a reason to enjoy them within 6 months because that's what we want.
Got it. Now, is it? I mean, I know there's some concern about. I know there's some concern about just plastic in general and having more plastic in the world.
Right.
But I guess the alternative side to that is like, how much does like a pallet of these bottles weigh? Like,
Right.
you must like. I
Yeah.
mean, just I'm just imagining like lifting the cases of wine. I guess it comes in a case like normal
Yeah.
wine bottles
Yeah.
would, but like I
Mhm.
just imagine like you've just saved,
Yes.
20 pounds per
Yes.
case, like,
Yes.
at
I
least.
mean, actually, if I remember right, when we measure, I feel like a bottle, or let me think about this because I'm trying to
Maybe
remember.
it,
I weighed
maybe.
packages when I was shipping them. And I think two glass bottles was 5 pounds. And two paper
Really?
bottles, yes, was like 4 or 5 pounds with the box and everything.
Oh,
There's,
right, right, right.
not just
Shipping,
the,
yeah,
yeah, the shipping boxes with the
right,
holders and everything. Like I'm just thinking when I weigh that, it's like 5 pounds to ship
right,
versus uh, two bottles of paper in the same packaging material is like 2.5 to 3 pounds. So
right.
it's definitely lighter. I love picking up cases of paper bottles over our glass bottles because you feel the difference. And
Yeah.
everybody says that when they pick up the bottle, they're like, oh my gosh, like a full bottle is so much lighter. Yeah. And
And
so
do
you're
you?
getting a lot of that with not only the weight, but also because it's 90% recyclable with the cardboard, you're using less water to make these things than you are with glass. There's a lot of different, you could go into all the environmental differences. And Kinspray and this packaging actually has some of it on the bottles. You'll see it in the pictures. It'll say it uses 90% less water to produce and less emissions, and shipping and all those other things.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I worry about plastic, but I think, I just want to point out this other side of it, like the part of
Uh-huh.
the reason why it's what, like there's that the carbon footprint for these is way less, and
Yes.
and it's, even in the recycle stream, it's way
Hmm.
less because, just the temperature and process to recycle cardboard and plastic is way lower, way less carbon than to heat up a furnace to recycle glass.
Correct.
um so yeah, I mean, there's, it's one of
It's
those
it's a
like,
trade-off. I mean,
yeah,
and
one
that's
of those
what I
things.
always say is that's what I'm always trying to like. You can only do so much, and I'm just
Yeah,
trying to do what I can do. And if it's
yeah,
something, I mean, you're never going to be 100% perfect.
yeah,
Even using, another option I'll tell people is you could reuse them. I mean, you don't want to use them over and over and over again, but because it's plastic, but you could rinse it out and put water in it and throw it in your freezer and make an ice pack out of it for your cooler. You know, or
yeah,
whatever. These are
yeah,
great because you could take them to the beach and on a boat. You don't have to worry about glass. Um,
yeah. Is
you
there
know,
any? Is there any? Uh, is it? I mean, you can ship these. Like, you don't have any
yeah.
problem shipping them.
No, we didn't have any problem shipping them. I put them in the
Wow.
same things as
The glass.
yeah, as the same cartons that I
Oh,
ship
gotcha.
in.
The same packaging
Same
as you.
packaging. Yep.
Huh.
Yep.
That's
No, and
amazing.
I'll put a note in there, like, please let us know if you have any issues, with packaging. And, I've had people write me back. Nope. Everything arrived fine. Perfect. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
Wild.
So it's something different. And I'm hoping, I mean, there's other things out there too. And that's one thing we started was when an article came out in the Winston-Salem Journal about us and doing this. We got a company that does other types of sustainable packaging reach out to us, and we had their salesman come. And there's a lot of these companies are starting to get on board with it. I know some of the glass bottle companies are doing less glass, so it's lighter and all this other stuff, but there's not a lot doing the paper bottles or anything like that. But some of them are trying to find alternative methods. One, we talked to a guy who was they're making plastic bottles, but instead of out of oil hydrocarbon based plastic, it's out of sugarcane. So he
Right.
said it's still a plastic and you recycle it with your plastic chemistry wise, but it's made from sugarcane. Again, so is it still a plastic? Yes, but is it an oil based hydrocarbon plastic? That's going to take thousands of years to break down. Probably not, but they
Yeah,
had
but
some really cool different things too, like made from they were more expensive again, because this is all kind of new technology. So for
right.
us, we're talking, for you're looking at cost, it's about 35 cents more a bottle than
Okay.
a glass bottle. By the time you factor in the cost of the glass bottle, the label, the cork, the whole thing, we're paying about 30 to 35 cents more. And that includes our shipping cost. So the more of this that gets out there and the more machines that are more localized to make them and less shipping costs, that could go down, you know.
Right.
But that's again where I felt like it was worth the investment, because,
Yeah.
again, we're not doing for a big distributing wine manufacturer, that might be way too much. But for us, it was something that we were going to keep it more small scale anyway.
Well, it's really cool. I appreciate you sharing all this. I was going to ask about cost, so
Yeah.
thanks for bringing
Yeah.
that up. So you're saying the shipping of the pallet to you
Yeah.
versus that's part included in that cost where you come up with
Yeah.
30, 35
Yeah.
percent
30 to
Gotcha.
35 cents a bottle. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay,
hmm
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get a lot more. It's kind of cool on the labeling side. You get a
Yeah,
lot
the
more
bottles look
space.
great.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you look at the sides of them, I mean, the amount of space and information you could put on there. We put the QR code on there that takes you to our website. We put a little bit about the charity that it donates to. So that was just, was kind of a unique thing too, is you could do so much more than you can with a regular label.
Yeah. Yep, yep. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. Anything else? What did we miss talking about? Did I forget to ask you something? Anything important?
I don't know. Well, I don't think so. Well, I'm trying to think of anything else. Do we talk about that we're switching hands here?
Oh yeah, yeah, we should. We should. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
So
just so that
after
you
all of this,
I
if every-
know, I know. Uh,
no, no, that's great. No, it's good that you say
yeah,
you guys you're moving on in your life because
yes,
jobs have taken you out of state, and so you
yeah,
have to you're transferring the ownership of the vineyard. So you're again when you say this goes back. This is a good bookend when you started with us, the royal we. The
right,
royal we includes the new owners as well, because they're going to
yeah,
be essentially, as far as taking on the exact same mantle and
right,
continuing all the same, all the same organic certification, doing basically, if anything, just improving on what you're already doing, and otherwise keeping the ship
Salem.
steering in the same direction,
Yep, yep,
sailing.
exactly. So that's yes. So when we took
And the
over,
name won't change. The name will be the
the name
same.
won't change. Carolina Heritage will still be here. It will be still. You Google it, the first certified organic vineyard. Yeah, they're keeping it all going, and we're happy about that. Great couple, and if everything goes well, we'll be moving on to Michigan. This was a great, exciting chapter of our life, and a story for us to just tell. And we're excited that it's going to continue, because we put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this place. This has been here since 2005. The first vines were planted by the previous founding owners, Pat and Clyde Cowell. And so it's been a name, and it's been recognized for over 20 years now. So they definitely were like, no, we don't want to change anything. We just, want to keep it exactly what you guys are doing. And, obviously everybody puts their own spin on it as they take ownership, but um, a lot of the things that we're doing, we're teaching them. We just brewed a beer with them last week. We're canning a wine this week. We're teaching them bottling in the next couple weeks. But they're kind of a unique situation too, because they own an environmental operations company that does all sorts of like environmental solutions. So it was kind of a perfect fit. And they're really, looking forward to learning more in the business and sharing it with other people as well.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool. Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad we. I forgot.
Added that.
Yeah,
I didn't know how
forgot.
much you wanted to say, because I'm like, how the business things go, but hopefully everything goes well, and
Right, right.
everything
Uh,
moves forward in this direction. It looks like it's going to, and it's exciting. It's exciting to see what they're going to do and add to it, and who knows? Maybe you'll see our apple pie wines on a shelf someday, and that'd be
Nice.
cool.
Yeah.
We told them if we had more time and energy,
Well,
we would look at that.
well, like I said, I've been spending a lot of time exploring Michigan lately, so I think you're
Mhm.
heading to a place with a lot of great wine options already up there. So you
Yeah,
have to,
I'm looking
you have to.
forward to it, and looking forward to, we'll be closer to some family, and there's a lot of good coming out of it. Besides moving to a colder climate, I'm not super excited about that. I
Yeah,
did come from Buffalo, but I have lived in warm weather for 20 years, so that's my only little hesitation. But we'll be fine. We'll make it work in the summer times and the travel to warm locations, come back and visit and see what's going on over here.
awesome. Well, thanks so much, Wendy. I really
This
appreciate
has
you
been
spending the time
fantastic, Adam. Thank
telling about all this. Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I want to thank all of you who support this podcast through donations, Patreon subscriptions, sponsorships, or just posting a great review and telling a friend. You make this podcast possible, and I'm honored and humbled and inspired by your support. If you'd like to support this podcast, you'll find links to all the ways you can support it in the show notes.